The first time the sky gave Leora a gift. It sounded like the universe clearing its throat. A low rumble rolled across the white dunes, deep enough to shake the glass in the colony domes, deep enough to make the ocean on the far right shiver, like it was afraid. People ran outside and pointed, and someone laughed, and someone else cried. And Leora did neither. Leora just listened, because she had grown up on Vera Shore, where storms could strip metal clean, where the wind could sand a bolt into dust, where the sky never spoke unless it meant it. A streak of fire cut the pale blue morning, bright enough to paint the sand with orange, bright enough to turn every shadow sharp and cruel. It came down beyond the purple stalk fields, near the quiet stretch of beach where the white sand met. The water like a promise. Sirens began a second too late. By the time the colony speakers ordered everyone back inside, Leora was already running, barefoot. Her father would have yelled. The security teams would have stopped her, but none of them were close enough. And Leora had been close to alone for so long that fear had started to feel like a weak suggestion. She ran past the indigo plants with curled tops, past the bulbous violet clumps that looked like sleeping hearts, past warning signs half buried in sand, past the last fence post that marked the safe zone. The impact site was not a crater. That was the first wrong thing. It was a circle, as if the sand itself had been pushed aside politely. In the center floated an object the size of a large pack animal, dark as a moon shadow. An egg. Not stone, not metal, not anything her eyes could name. It hovered a handspan above the sand, as if gravity had been asked to wait. A crack ran down its side, and inside that crack a molten orange light pulsed like breath. Heat shimmered around it, but the sand beneath it was not melted, just pressed, clean, almost gentle. Leora stopped at the edge of the circle and tried to inhale. Her lungs filled with air that tasted like salt and sun and something sharp, like a storm about to break. She should have turned around. She should have called for help. Instead, she stepped forward. Her foot sank into the white sand, and when she lifted it, it left a clear print. The egg twitched, not a wobble from wind, not a drift from tide, a deliberate movement. The crack widened, orange flaring brighter. A sound came from inside, small and thin, like a pebble tapping glass. Then the shell split with a soft tearing noise that made Leora's teeth ache. The orange glow dimmed, and something pale unfolded from the dark. A little figure, child-sized, with skin like frost-kissed glass, light blue and almost white, large. Eyes opened, glossy and dark, innocent the way the sea can look innocent right before it pulls you under. Elongated ears flicked as if catching music no one else could hear. A crest of tendrils rose from its head, filaments glowing cyan, some tips burning brighter like tiny stars. It wore a simple gray-blue tunic, draped and uneven. As if it had been wrapped in woven wind, it stood, blinking in the harsh light. And for a heartbeat, Leora wondered if she had gone mad. Then the creature looked down at the sand, looked at her footprint, and stepped directly into it, perfectly, like it belonged there. It took another step, carefully, and placed its small foot into the next print she had made. It did not step beside. It did not step ahead. It did not step anywhere else. It followed only the path her bare feet had pressed into the beach. Leora's throat tightened. The wind hissed. The ocean breathed. The purple stalk swayed. And the creature kept moving, following her prints as if they were a map written just for it. Behind it, the cracked shell hovered, still floating, still glowing faintly, like an ember refusing to die. Leora took one step back, then another. The creature followed, placing its feet into her prints, one by one, without hesitation. Chill ran through her, sharp as ice. Not fear of claws or teeth, because it had neither, not fear of poison, because the air around it smelled clean, almost sweet. It was the fear of being chosen, of being singled out by something that came from the sky. A distant shout echoed from the dunes. Security, Leora heard. The crunch of boots on sand, the crackle of radios, the clipped urgency of adults who believed the world belonged to them. She looked at the creature. It looked back at her, eyes wide, eyes trusting. Eyes empty of language but full of intent. She whispered, "Stay." The creature tilted its head, tendrils glowing brighter. It did not understand the word, but it understood her feet. Leora turned and ran. Sand sprayed behind her, her footprints, forming fast, imperfect, frantic marks behind her. The creature moved with impossible determination, stepping into every print she left, never missing one, never stepping outside. Security shouted louder. Boots closing in. Leora cut hard left toward the purple stalks, toward a line of dark indigo stems that would hide her from the watch drones. She ran between them, the curled tops brushing her shoulders like cold fingers. She glanced back once. The creature squeezed through the stalks, still stepping into her. Prints even when the sand was disturbed, even when her path was half erased. It found the prints anyway, as if it could smell them, as if the pressure she left behind was a signal. A drone buzzed overhead, scanning. Leora dropped low and crawled, leaving handprints, smearing her footprints, trying to confuse it, trying to confuse everyone. The creature paused, looked at the mess of marks, then did something that made Leora's breath stop. It reached out, touched the sand lightly with its fingertips, and the cyan tips of its tendrils flared. The disturbed grain settled, the smears clarified, and her footprints appeared again, as if the beach itself wanted the creature to keep following. It stepped forward, neatly, obediently. Leora's heart pounded so hard it hurt. She crawled faster, then stood and sprinted again. The colony dome rose ahead, a curved wall of clear polymer, reflecting the ringed planet in the sky. Huge and silent, its rings slicing the blue like a blade. Two smaller moons hung nearby, one a bright crescent, one a faint orb, watching like witnesses. Leora reached a maintenance hatch half buried in sand and yanked it open. Cool filtered air rushed out, smelling of metal and recycled water. She slipped inside, feet slapping on the ladder rungs, then pulled the hatch down above her. Darkness swallowed the light. For a second, everything went quiet. Then a soft tap came from above. Tap, 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 tap. The creature, trying to step into her last footprint at the hatch edge, trying to understand why the ground had disappeared. Leora pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from making a sound. Her eyes adjusted, and she saw the narrow tunnel stretching toward the lower service ring of the colony. She ran barefoot over the gridded floor, ignoring the sting, ignoring the cold. Behind her, above, the tapping continued. Patient, persistent. She reached the service exit near her father's lab sector and forced it open. Warm light spilled in, the hum of generators, the distant murmur of people. She stepped out, then froze. The creature was there, standing perfectly still on the threshold, as if it had already followed her through the impossible. Its feet were on the exact marks she had left, even though those marks should not exist on metal flooring. Yet there they were, faint impressions, not dirt, not smudge. More like pressure shadows. Leora stared, and the creature stared back, and Leora understood. With a sinking certainty, it was not following sand, it was following her, her path, her imprint on the world. Her footsteps were not just marks, they were permission. A voice thundered down the corridor. Leora, her father, Dr. Velen Marek, face pale, hair disheveled, eyes frantic with relief and fury tangled together. He grabbed her shoulders, checked her arms, her head, her ribs, as if making sure the universe had not taken anything else from him. Then his gaze dropped past her, to the creature. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first, because scientists are trained to be calm, and this was not calm. This was a miracle. Standing barefoot in a hallway, security rushed in behind him. Weapons raised. Step away from it, someone barked. Leora moved without thinking and placed herself between the rifles and the creature. Her father's eyes flicked to her. Leora, he said, voice low, shaking. What did you do? I didn't do anything, she whispered. It chose me. The creature stepped forward one pace, into the print Leora had made when she shifted. Her weight, security flinched, fingers tightening on triggers. The creature did not bare teeth, did not hiss, did not threaten. It just looked up at Leora, like a lost child looks up at the only person who has not walked away. And Leora felt something inside her crack the way the egg had cracked, hot and bright and painful. Her father raised a hand, palm out, commanding calm, lower. He ordered, and some of the rifles lowered, not all. A woman in a dark uniform pushed forward, insignia of the colonial authority bright on her collar, Director Say. The person who could turn a discovery into a weapon with a single signature. Her gaze swept over the creature as if it were already. "Property, we will contain it," she said, "for everyone's safety." The creature leaned slightly toward Leora. The cyan tendrils on its head brightened. Trembling, Leora said, "No." Director Say's eyes narrowed. "It is not a pet." She said, "It is an unknown extraterrestrial organism that arrived inside a meteorite. You will step aside." Leora's father spoke quickly, carefully, choosing words like he was walking on broken glass. "Director, we have no data, we have no idea. If aggression will provoke a defense response." Say smiled without warmth. "Then you will get data," she replied, "and we will get control." A containment unit rolled in behind her, clear walls, locking clamps, shock mesh. The creature looked at it, then looked down at the floor, as if searching for Leora's prints, as if planning. Leora's chest tightened, and she did something she had never done in her life, something she did not know she was capable of. She took her father's hand and squeezed hard, then she stepped backward, leaving a clear pressure shadow on the floor. The creature followed into it, then she stepped again, toward the open corridor that led away from the lab sector. The creature followed again. Director Say barked, "Stop her." 2 guards lunged. Leora ran, bare feet slapping, leaving fast prints. The creature moved after her, quicker than its small body should allow. Still stepping into every mark she left, guards chased, radios crackled, alarms began to wail. Leora's father shouted her name again, but his voice was swallowed by the rising panic. Leora sprinted toward the older part of the colony, the maintenance corridors the authority hated because cameras failed there, because the walls were thick and the lights flickered. She dove into a narrow passage and kept going, breath burning, heart screaming behind her. The creature kept perfect pace, not by speed, but by certainty. As if the path itself pulled it forward, they reached a sealed hatch with warning paint. Restricted, outer shore access. Beyond it lay the open beach, the deadly wind, the unfiltered sky. Leora pressed her palm to the scanner, and it flashed red, no authorization. A guard's shout echoed behind her, "Close now." Leora looked at the creature, wild desperation rising. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't get you out." The creature stepped into her last footprint and reached for the hatch with small pale fingers. The cyan tips flared, and the panel lights blinked. The scanner turned green. The lock released with a heavy clunk. Leora stared, stunned. The creature had not used a code, had not hacked a system in any way she understood. It had simply followed her intent the way it followed her feet. And the door had obeyed. They burst out onto the beach. Instant heat and glare hit them. Bright sun, harsh shadows, white sand stretching wide, ocean calm and distant. The ringed planet loomed overhead like a god watching silently. Leora ran again, away from the dome, away from the guns. The creature followed, stepping into every print. Behind them the colony doors slammed open and boots hit sand. A rifle cracked, a warning shot, the sound sharp enough to tear the air. Leora flinched, but kept running. The creature turned its head toward the sound, tendrils brightening, and the cracked shell. The dark egg husk that had hovered behind it since birth rose from the sand and drifted forward. Molten light flared within the fissures. The shell moved between Leora and the colony. Like a shield, another shot cracked. The projectile struck the floating shell and vanished, swallowed into orange glow with a hiss like steam. The guards stopped, shocked. Leora kept running until her Lungs screamed and her legs shook. She didn't stop until the purple stalk field surrounded her and the colony dome was far behind. A shining curve against the sky, she collapsed onto the sand, chest heaving. The creature lowered itself beside her, carefully placing its feet into the last prints she had made before she fell. Then it sat, very close, shoulder touching her arm. Its skin was cool, like shade. Its eyes blinked slowly. Leora stared at it. And tears rose before she understood why. Because it had come from the sky in a burning shell. Because it could have been a monster. A weapon. A threat. And instead it had followed her. Like it needed her, like it trusted her. Like it had decided she was its OME, Leora whispered. Why me? The creature made a small sound, soft and rising, almost a question. It lifted one hand and touched the sand beside her footprint. Then touched her ankle. Then touched its own chest. Then it looked up at the ringed planet. And for a moment, the cyan tendrils brightened so strongly the shadows around them shifted. Leora felt a pressure behind her eyes, as if something was trying to place an image inside her mind, not words, not language, a feeling, a memory, a sense of falling through darkness, wrapped in heat, held in a shell that refused to break until it reached the right place. A sense of looking down at a planet and seeking one particular pattern, one particular rhythm, one particular path, a sense of waiting for footsteps. Leora swallowed, voice trembling. You were looking for me. The creature blinked. And the cyan glow steadied. Far behind them, the colony sirens continued, but faint now. Like a distant animal warning the pack, Leora lay back on the sand, staring at the sky, and tried to think. The authority would not stop. They would hunt. They would take the creature, cut it open, learn how it did what it did, and call it security. Leora's father would be trapped between them and his daughter. And the authority always won those battles. Unless something bigger changed the game, a shadow passed over the sand, slow and immense. Leora sat up, alarm surging. But it was only the ringed planet's angle shifting with time, a reminder that the sky did not care about their small fears. The creature stood and walked a few steps away. Still within the path of Leora's footprints, it reached toward a purple stalk, not touching it, just hovering its hand near. The stalk trembled, then bent, curling toward the creature like a flower turning to sun. Leora's breath caught. The creature was not just following, it was communicating with the planet itself. Then the sand beside Leora's foot began to vibrate. A low hum rose from below, felt more than heard. Leora pressed her palm to the ground and felt something deep answering, like a sleeping machine stirring. Her father had once told her stories about the old ruins under Vera Shore. Ancient structures no one could open, no one could map properly, no one could explain. He had called them the quiet bones of the planet. The authority had sealed most of them, called them hazards, called them dead. But the ground under Leora's hand did not feel dead. It felt like it had been waiting. The creature looked at her, then looked toward the far stretch of beach where the sand rose into jagged dunes, where the wind carved sharp ridges and hid things beneath. Then it stepped into her next footprint that did not exist yet, and paused as if asking her to make it. Leora's throat tightened. You want me to walk, she whispered. The creature's tendrils pulsed. Leora stood on shaking legs and took a step forward, leaving a fresh print. The creature stepped into it instantly. Leora took another step, then another, and the creature followed. Together they moved across the dunes, toward something unseen. Behind them, faint in the distance, figures appeared on the horizon, search teams in dark suits, drones like insects against the bright sky. Leora kept walking. She did not know why she trusted this. Maybe because she had spent too long being treated like a problem to manage. A child to keep quiet. A girl to keep safe. And for the first time, something looked at her as if she mattered to the shape of the world. They walked for a long time, the sun high, shadows sharp, the ocean glinting. The creature never stepped outside her prints, even when she stumbled, even when her feet bled. Even when her path twisted to avoid wind-cut ravines, it followed with devotion so absolute it frightened her, because devotion like that always demanded a price. Sooner or later, the wind picked up, carrying grit, slapping her face, drying her tears before they could fall. Leora crested a dune and stopped dead. Below lay a circle of black stone half buried in white sand, perfectly smooth, perfectly round. In the center was a seam, like a door with no handle. No lock, no markings. Around it, the purple stalks grew in a ring. Bowed inward, as if worshipping, the creature's tendrils flared, bright cyan against the harsh day. It stepped into Leora's last footprint and reached toward the seam. The air vibrated, the sand trembled, and the seam began to glow a deep orange. The same molten color that had lived inside the egg. Leora's stomach dropped. This was not a random hatchling. This was a key, and she was the hand that turned it. A distant roar came from behind. Engines, authority skimmers, closing fast. Leora heard the crackle of loudspeakers carried on the wind, distorted, angry. Leora Marek, stop now. You are in violation. Her name sounded strange in the open air, like it didn't belong to the Kia. Sky, she looked at the creature, then at the glowing seam, then back toward the approaching skimmers. Her mouth went dry. If she ran now, she would lose whatever this was. If she stayed, they would take her, and they would take the creature, and they would take this door, and they would turn it into a cage or a gun. The scene brightened, orange deepening. The creature turned its head toward the skimmers, tendrils trembling. The cracked shell floated closer, molten light flaring, ready to shield again. Leora whispered, "What are you?" The creature touched her footprint, then touched the seam, then touched its own chest again, and a wave of feeling flooded Leora's mind, so sharp she gasped. A memory of a world long ago, a world under a ringed giant's shadow. A civilization that built paths through space like bridges. A civilization that learned the universe listened to pattern, to rhythm, to repeated intention. Footsteps, not feet, not sand, not human. Footsteps as in choices, as in movement forward, as in the refusal to stay still. Then the feeling shifted, turned dark, urgent. A sense of a storm coming from above, not weather, something worse. A rain of burning stones, a cascade of meteors, a signal, a countdown. Leora's breath shook. "This is about more meteors," she whispered. The creature's eyes held hers, wide and steady. Yes, that was the answer, not spoken, but clear. Another gift was coming, and it would not be gentle. The skimmers crested the dunes behind, their shadows sweeping over the sand. "Move away from the object," a voice blared, "or you will be restrained." Leora felt something inside her harden. Not courage, not bravery, something older. The anger of being pushed, the anger of being ignored, the anger of watching the authority take everything and call it protection. She took a step toward the seam, leaving a new footprint closer. The creature stepped into it, tendrils blazing cyan. The seam opened silently, like a mouth deciding to speak. Warm orange light poured out. Not heat, not fire, more like sunrise. Made solid, inside was a passage sloping down into darkness lit by soft glowing lines. The skimmers hovered closer, sand whipping. Guards jumped out, rifles raised, visors down. Director Say's voice rang out over the wind, sharp and furious. "Leora, you will come back now. You are a child." Leora turned her head, eyes stinging with grit, and shouted back, "I am a person." Her voice tore out of her like a wound. The guards hesitated, not because of her words, but because the ground beneath them began to hum. The ring of purple stalks bowed lower, the cracked shell floated higher, molten orange flaring like a warning. Director Say stepped forward anyway, fearless in the way people are fearless when they believe the world must obey them. "Take the organism," she snapped, "and take the girl." A guard lunged, grabbing for Leora's arm. Leora twisted, leaving a fresh footprint, stumbling toward the open seam. The creature moved instantly into her print, then raised its hand. The cyan tendrils flared so bright the shadows vanished. The guard froze mid-step, body locked as if held by invisible hands. The rifles lifted, but the cracked shell drifted forward and the molten light inside it pulsed. Shots fired, and every projectile that touched the shell vanished into orange glow, swallowed like sparks. Into a furnace, Liara stared, shaking. The creature was protecting her. Not with violence, but with refusal. Refusal to let the path be broken. The hum deepened, and the open seam widened as if inviting, as if pleading. Liara swallowed hard and stepped into the passage. Cool air rushed up from below, smelling of stone and old electricity and something like rain. The creature followed into her footprint at the threshold, then into the next one as she moved down. Behind them, Director Say screamed orders. Boots clanged on the stone ring, but when the first guard tried to step into the passage, the floor beneath his foot did not accept him. It was like his weight had no permission. Like the world itself rejected him. He stumbled back, shocked. Another guard tried. Same result. They could not follow, because the creature would not follow their footsteps, and the door would not open for theirs. Liara descended, heart hammering. The seam above began to close, orange light narrowing, leaving. Director Say's furious face framed in it like a portrait of rage. Liara! Her father's voice suddenly echoed from above, raw, breaking. Liara, please. Liara froze. She had not expected him to be there. She looked up, tears burning, and saw him pushing through the guards, hair wild, eyes desperate. "Don't!" he shouted. "Don't take her!" Director Say grabbed his arm, and he tore free, staggering to the edge. He looked down at Liara, and for a moment he was not a scientist, not a colony official, not a man with credentials. He was just a father who had already lost too much. Liara's throat closed. "Dad," she whispered. He swallowed hard, voice shaking. "I'm sorry." That broke something in her, because she had been waiting years to hear that word. Sorry for the long nights. Sorry for the grief he never spoke. Sorry for the way the colony had hardened him into a tool. He lifted his hand, palm out, the old signal he used when she was small. The signal that meant wait, stay, I am coming. But the seam was closing, the orange light shrinking. Liara looked at the creature beside her, tendrils dimmer now, as if the act of opening the path had cost it something. She looked back up at her father, and she made a choice that hurt like tearing flesh. She stepped deeper into the passage, leaving new footprints. The creature followed, obedient, devoted. The seam snapped shut above with a soft final sound, and the world of wind and guns vanished. Silence wrapped around them. Not empty silence, a living silence, like a huge machine holding its breath. The tunnel sloped down into a chamber vast enough to swallow the colony, its walls smooth black stone, threaded with glowing lines. Orange and cyan, pulsing like veins. In the center stood a pillar, and within it floated another shell, larger than the one that had carried the creature, cracked but unbroken, molten light sealed inside like a heart trapped in glass. Liara stepped closer, her bare feet echoing softly. The creature followed, and the cyan tips brightened with recognition. The pillar responded, the glowing lines along the floor lighting up in sequence, trailing behind Liara's footprints like the chamber was memorizing her path. A sound rose, low and deep, not a voice, but a chord, like the chamber was playing a note in her bones. And images flooded her mind, clearer now, sharper, a sky filled with fire, meteors falling in a pattern like a message, a civilization sending eggs, sending seeds, sending living keys across space, not to conquer, but to warn, to choose, to find someone whose footsteps meant forward, whose heart meant protect. Liara's breath hitched. "You needed a keeper," she whispered. The creature touched her ankle gently, then touched the pillar, then touched its own chest again. "Keep, yes, then." The feeling turned urgent, terrifying. The ringed planet above, huge and beautiful, was not just a sky ornament. It was a clock. Its rings carried debris, ice and stone, and something was shifting. Something was destabilizing. A cascade was starting, slow at first, then faster. Like a crack in a dam, very soon, the ring would shed, and the debris would rain down on Vera Shore, on the colony, on the ocean. On the white sand, meteors, countless, not one gift, but a storm of them. Leora swayed. Nausea rising. "No," she whispered. "We will die." The chamber hummed, and the pillar glowed brighter. The creature's tendrils flared cyan, then faded, as if it was pushing itself to speak without words. A final image formed in Leora's mind, a path that had to be walked, a sequence of steps across the chamber floor, specific places where her feet needed to land, a pattern that would activate something deep in the planet, something old, something powerful, a defense, a shield. But it required a living path, not a code, not a machine input. Footsteps. Leora stared down at the glowing lines on the floor, trembling. The first mark pulsed, inviting. She took one step forward and placed her foot exactly where the light indicated. Leaving a clear print, the chamber responded, a deeper hum. The creature stepped into her print immediately, completing the circuit. The next mark pulsed. Leora stepped again, then again, following the pattern the images had shown, each step made. The glowing lines flare brighter. Each print seemed to lock into place like a key tooth. The creature followed perfectly, cyan tendrils bright with effort. Leora's feet began to ache, then burn. The floor was not hot, but the energy rising through it made her bones feel too full. Like her body was becoming a conduit, she kept stepping, breathing hard, eyes watering. She could almost hear the storm above now, a distant rumble through stone. Then the chamber shook, dust sifting down. The authority had found another way in. Drilling, cutting, forcing, metal shrieked somewhere above. Leora's heart clenched. If they broke the chamber, if they disrupted the sequence, the shield would fail. She stepped faster, following the pulsing marks. Footprints forming a luminous trail, the creature followed. Tendrils blazing cyan and orange now, mixing like sunrise and flame. The pillar's molten core brightened, and the chamber's hum rose into a roar you could feel in your teeth. Then, new sound cut through, harsh, human, amplified. Director Say's voice, echoing through cracks. "You will stop, or we will gas the chamber." Leora stumbled, rage surging. She shouted into the darkness, "You can't own this." Her voice came back to her, smaller, swallowed by the ancient stone. But the chamber did not feel like it belonged to Director Say. It felt like it belonged to the planet. Leora took the next step, then the next, tears streaming now. She thought of her mother. Gone to sickness the colony called manageable until it wasn't. She thought of her father, trapped above in a world of orders. She thought of the creature beside her, born from fire just to find her. And she stepped. The final mark pulsed brighter. Then the rest, almost white. Leora placed her foot down, and the chamber went silent for a fraction of a breath. Then everything ignited. Lines of light surged across the floor, racing along her footprint trail, climbing the walls, spiraling up. The pillar. The molten core inside the pillar flared orange like a small sun. The creature's tendrils flared cyan so intensely that Leora saw the chamber in sharp detail. Every curve, every seam, every hidden channel. The pillar opened like a flower, and within it a column of light rose. Straight up, piercing stone, piercing sand, piercing sky. Leora felt the planet answer. Deep below, a massive slow movement, as if something ancient had shifted its weight. Above, the ringed planet's shadow seemed to tremble. The storm of debris hesitated, and then, like a hand closing around a fistful of falling stones, something invisible gathered the chaos, pulled it, redirected it. Not stopping the meteors, catching them, guiding them away from the colony, away from the ocean, away from the white sand. Leora gasped, falling to her knees, overwhelmed. The creature sank beside her, still stepping into her last print. But its glow was dimming now, flickering, Its big dark eyes looked up at her. And for the first time, Leora felt something unmistakable. Grief, not hers, its. Leora's chest tightened. "No," she whispered. "Don't you dare." The creature lifted. A small hand and touched her cheek, cool and gentle. Then it turned toward the pillar, toward the molten core, and its tendrils brightened one last time. Leora felt the meaning before she could understand it. The shield had worked because the path was complete, but the system needed a final anchor, a living stabilizer, something born of the same fire as the meteors, something that could speak to the sky debris and hold the pattern steady. The creature had not come to survive. It had come to finish a job. Leora surged forward, grabbing at its tunic, shaking her head, tears spilling. "Nitrogen monoxide," she choked. "You are not leaving me." The creature looked at her, and the cyan tips pulsed softly, like a heartbeat calming. Then it stepped into the last footprint she had made near the pillar. And because it followed only her footsteps, it could reach the exact place the system required. It placed its small hand on the molten core. Orange light flared. The cracked shell that had shielded them drifted forward and wrapped around the creature. Like an embrace, pieces aligning, sealing, becoming whole again, Leora screamed. A sound ripped out of her that felt too big for her body. The chamber shook, the pillar surged, the light column intensified, and the egg sealed shut with the creature inside. Floating, calm, steady, glowing, a living anchor. A guardian locked in fire, Leora collapsed in the sand dust, sobbing until her ribs hurt. The chamber's hum softened into a steady pulse, like a heart that would keep beating even without her. Above, distant impacts sounded far away. But not here, not on the colony. Not on the shore. The storm had been caught, redirected, saved. Saved by a creature that followed only her footsteps. Saved because she had walked. Because she had chosen forward. Because she had refused to hand it over. Cracks spread in the ceiling. Above, light filtering through, and voices echoed as the authority finally broke through. Boots hit stone, rifles swung, and Director Say entered the chamber with her guards. Eyes wide at the glowing pillar, the floating sealed egg, the luminous footprint trail. She stared at Leora on the ground, hair sandy, feet bleeding, face wet with tears. "What did you do?" she demanded. Leora looked up at her, voice raw, and said, "I saved you." Director Say's mouth tightened, and she stepped closer, hungry with possession even now. "That artifact belongs to the authority," she said, pointing at the floating egg. "That organism is now a strategic asset." Leora pushed herself upright, shaking, and stepped forward, leaving one more footprint on the glowing floor. The chamber responded to her print with a soft pulse. As if recognizing its walker, the guards shifted uneasily. Sensing they were not in charge here, Leora stared at Say and said, "It is not yours," Say sneered. "You are a child." Leora's voice rose, loud and clear. "I am the one it chose." The chamber hummed a little deeper, and the glowing lines brightened. Say hesitated, just a fraction. Because power hates being refused, but it hates being powerless even more. Then another figure pushed into the chamber, breathless, her father, face streaked with dust, eyes red, staring at Leora as if he was seeing her for the first time. Then he saw the floating egg, the sealed shell, the steady glow. He covered his mouth with his hand, and his shoulders shook. Leora's throat tightened, and she forced herself to stand straight. Her father stepped toward her slowly, ignoring the guards, ignoring Say, and when he reached her he did not grab her, did not scold her, did not pull rank. He just took her hand, gently. As if afraid she would vanish, his voice broke. "You walked into hell," he whispered, "and you brought the sky back under control." Leora swallowed, tears rising again. "I didn't do it alone," she whispered. "It followed me." Her father looked at the egg, then back at her, and something in his eyes changed, something soft and fierce. He turned to Director Say, and for the first time in Leora's life, her father sounded like a man who would burn a world before letting it take his child. "This is not an asset," he said. "This is a life that saved every person you claim to protect." Director Say's jaw tightened. "You will be charged." She snapped. "Both of you." Leora stepped forward again, leaving a new footprint, and the chamber pulsed. The air seemed to press against the guards, not harming, just warning. And Leora understood, in her bones. The chamber knew her. The system listened to her path. Director Say could bring 1,000 rifles, 1,000 drills, 1,000 laws, but none of it mattered if the world itself refused her footsteps. Leora looked at the floating egg and whispered, "I will come back." The egg glowed softly, steady. Not answering with words, answering with presence. Her father squeezed her hand, and Leora felt his promise without him speaking it. He would fight now. He would not fold. Because his daughter had become something the authority could not categorize. Not a child, not a problem, not a quiet shadow behind his work. A walker, a chosen path days later, when the colony celebrated survival and tried to pretend it had been in control all along. Leora slipped back to the chamber alone. She walked the same route, leaving the same prints, and the door opened for her like it had always been waiting. Inside, the egg floated in its pillar cradle, glowing faintly, steady as a star held in a hand. Leora approached slowly, barefoot again, because it felt right. She placed her foot down, leaving a fresh print, and the egg pulsed once, softly. Leora whispered, "They want to use you." The egg stayed steady. She whispered, "I won't let them." The egg pulsed again, a little brighter. Leora sat on the cool stone floor and let herself breathe. She had lost her mother. She had lost a piece of her father for years. She had lost the creature that followed only her footsteps. But she had gained something too, something no one could take. A bond written into the planet's memory. A path that the universe had chosen to recognize. Leora looked up at the floating egg and said, "If you wake again," her voice shook, "find me." The egg glowed, steady, like an answer that did not need words. Above, through layers of stone and sand, the sky remained bright. The ringed planet hung silent, and the meteors that should have killed them drifted elsewhere, guided away by an ancient shield anchored by a small life born of fire. Leora stood, left one last footprint, and turned to go, and behind her, in the steady pulse of the chamber, she felt it. Not a voice, not language, a promise that when the time came, when the next storm threatened, when the world needed a path again, the pet meteor would remember. It would hatch when it had to, and it would follow only her footsteps.